and welcome to 9 to 42, the podcast from the team at the Guitar Show UK. Join us for interviews, updates and chat with artists, influencers and those that manufacture the gear that we love. Hello and welcome to 9 to 42, which is the podcast from the guys at the Guitar Show UK. And it must be warm in Jace's house because he's back to wearing Breton t-shirts. Jace, it's November.
I know, but I got home about 45 minutes ago and it was freezing, so I stuck the heating on. It's lovely and toasty in here now.
Right. It's lovely and toasty.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll gloss over that, shall we? And for those that are concerned, because I know a lot of you will be, I've just had my COVID booster. All done. Perfect. I managed to get away without anaphylactic shock. So far.
We'll catch up with you tomorrow and see how you're feeling now.
Yeah, let's record a special episode tomorrow. We've got Paul Sayer with us, and Paul Sayer of the Temperance movement in his loft, because he should be in his basement, but his basement's got a man in. Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Well, apart from me, my COVID update, I'm absolutely fine. Absolutely fine.
Any side effects?
I don't know. I mean, I think you're living this with me in real time. I'll give you a check in about 15 minutes. See how we've got. See how we've got on. First question, really, just the basic one, which we kind of ask everybody as we start. How's your pandemic been? I know that's quite a big period of time now, but
yeah, I mean, pretty rough from a work point of view. Obviously, I was actually on tour when it hit, so I was just a couple of weeks into what was meant to be a few months of touring.
Right.
So kind of came home from that unexpectedly.
How far had you got? Were you still in this country?
No, we'd done the UK dates, and then we went to France, and that's when there was kind of some rumblings that something might be happening. And then the French dates we managed to get through because they were kind of slowly lowering the capacity limit, and just by chance we were doing the smaller French shows later in that run, so we managed to scrape through those. And then we went to Germany, and I think the German government said that no shows over 5,000 people, but it took a while for each, because Germany's quite federal still.
Yeah.
It took a while for all the states to kind of implement it, because they were, they then locally had to implement it. So we got through, I don't know, 4 of the shows or something like that. And then, and then at 4:00 one day, the tour manager walked in the dressing room and said, "We're going home." And we got on the bus and we came home. And I was umming and ahhing about whether to leave my shoes on the tour or not, because I thought, well, we'll be back in a couple of weeks, and I don't know if I want to carry my shoes home with me. So, but I did, luckily, take them. So, yeah, it could have been worse, because at least I had my shoes with me, I suppose.
Well, yeah.
Wherever you lay your shoes.
Yeah. Anyway, so other than that, it's been, some DIY. And hanging out with the kids.
Which, let's face it, we've all got kids. There's a time limit on how long you can do that for.
Yeah.
About a fortnight. But
yeah.
I think the data came out this week, didn't it? That was it something like 55 to 60% of the creative arts sector was on furlough the whole way through. That was it, which is a ridiculously high.
Almost everybody I know that works in any creative space is freelance. Yeah. So I don't know if that figure factors those people in.
I don't, but it can't do, can it? Because so many people
so
aren't able to claim.
I would guess it's much, much higher than that.
Yeah.
And I kind of, when it first hit, there was kind of quite a flurry of activity from people that I think were trying to use the time to be really productive. So I was playing on quite a lot of stuff at home, for people, and sending it backwards and forwards to producers and whatnot. But that actually kind of that seemed to run out of steam quite quickly, because I think it's the modern music industry, it's so driven by live now, that once it was clear that this wasn't going to be over after 6 months, I think people kind of just maybe lost direction a bit, because they made a load of music, but then they couldn't really do much with it, because do you want to put an album out and not be able to go on tour? So there was kind of a flurry of activity to start with, but I think everybody kind of lost momentum a bit. And I was chatting with one of my friends who's a really great drummer, and I was sort of saying there's only so much practice or stuff at home on your own that you can do, because it's like a footballer going and kicking a football against a wall for 18 months. It's not really a solo pursuit, making music.
No, and to your point, that I mean, if you've got a reason to record a load of material, to do one, even two pieces of work, because you've got a touring schedule that's already sorted that you can do, and then suddenly you can actually release an album, tour it, and have another one ready to go, and then tour that one, because that's where the money's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But with no real end in sight, because obviously first at the beginning we all thought 3 months, didn't we? We all thought over,
exactly.
It's going to be done by the summer.
Mm-hmm.
But like you say, there's without that financial outlet, I mean, okay, if you're Ed Sheeran, fine, you can make money out of just having some content. But if you need to tour to make the cash, then
and also I think that what most people get most excited about is getting either going on tour and playing to audiences and being on stage with other musicians, or being in studios with other musicians.
Yeah.
Or I mean, pandemic or no pandemic, I can and do record at home, but I would always way rather go into the studio and sort of be face to face with whoever I'm working with, producer, artist, whatever. That's kind of like the fun bit, or the most fun bit. So I think, as well as kind of from a sort of strategic point of view, it started to not make much sense. Also, like, quite hard to motivate people when they can't really see how and when then they're going to go and get to do the parts of it that they love doing most.
I don't know if you want to talk about the temperance movement, and where that is now.
I mean, we can.
I mean, just because I love those 3 albums, absolutely adore them, and I was kind of gutted when Phil left. And I'm assuming that would have been in the middle of the pandemic at some point. Can't quite remember now.
It was actually kind of slightly before,
right?
And to be honest with you, it was sort of unravelling before that. Although I didn't know that Phil was going to leave, I also cannot say that I was in any way surprised.
Yeah.
And it kind of felt like it was going to come to a head in some way or another.
Yeah.
And that's the way it did,
Yeah. Are there plans to carry on with a new singer, or?
To be honest with you, if I'm kind of very open-minded about what, if anything, the temperance movement could be. But I only want to do it if it really feels right.
Yeah.
I don't want to kind of put a square peg in a round hole just for the sake of keeping doing it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it could kind of take, I mean, it sounds a bit cheesy, but, you know, the only reason to carry on with it in some way would be to make some really great music. And it would have to be kind of related enough to whatever the sort of ethos of the temperance movement is to be able to call it the temperance movement. You know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Is the honest answer.
There's 2 new albums coming out, isn't there? There's one sort of pre-Christmas and one sort of post-Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a rounding out of everything that you've got left in the vault sort of thing?
To be totally honest with you, that's it's more come from the label. You know, what it was their idea, and they've got, you know, material, various songs and covers and stuff, and they wanted to kind of consolidate it all. And it's actually become a bit of a bigger thing than I realised it was going to be, because I kind of thought that they were just going to essentially sort of group them together on the sort of streaming platforms, but they've you know, they're making some vinyl and stuff, which is cool, you know, and if people want to hear it and it fans of the band are into it, then great.
I love the fact that you're doing a purple cassette.
Yeah.
So, I've had a cassette player for 25 years.
The funny thing is, we in the early days of the band, we got something like 200 copies of the first record on cassette, which was our idea.
Yeah.
That we convinced the label to do, because we thought, this would be really cool. People will love this, and they were only like a £5 or something on the merch desk. You know, we thought it'd be really cool. People will love having these little, you know, and I think we've got about 197 of them left. So, so we'll see how the cassette goes this time around. But I have heard that people are into them now. But like I say, we've been down that road before.
Statistically speaking, it's the fastest growing format, isn't it? But obviously it's going from a very, very low base.
Yeah, well, that's, you know, it's kind of like when I love the fact that people are so into vinyl now. But when you read all these headlines about, you know, vinyl has, you know, there's a 10-fold increase in vinyl sales from 2 years ago. It kind of makes it sound like everyone's listening to music on vinyl again, and it, you know, it's not. And
it's not. It's someone. There was 30 sold, and now there's like 100 sold. It's still a really small market, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, you know, like Temperance movement. I think our fans and in general the type of people that are into that kind of music are much probably proportionately much more likely to buy vinyl.
Yes,
and go to gigs and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, which is great for us. And we always, you know, because we're fans of albums, we kind of always put a lot of time and effort into making sure that the records made sense as two sides of a record.
Yeah.
You know, so it's nice that people get to kind of hear it that way.
Yeah.
Because we play with the track listing a lot, you know, so you could divide it properly. But yeah, I think, you know, in other genres, they're not shifting as much vinyl.
No.
I find that whole topic of track listing fascinating, and why I think it is particularly fascinating now that vinyl's back. And it's the same argument for cassette, really, but it doesn't make any difference. The cassette doesn't move the needle. It was vinyl that did it. Was that suddenly you have two starts and two ends.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas on a CD, you started an album and you finished an album, and then you had what came in the middle. And and the track listing of the albums I grew up with in the 80s was very, very specifically based around two sides of a record, a cassette or an LP. And I think it's great because I think that throws an extra dynamic into the whole track listing thing. And it's always been something.
Well, and also, I think a lot of people's default way of track listing of an album these days is to put the songs on in order of how successful you think they're going to be as singles.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you kind of care about the vinyl, whether it's from a purely sort of creative point of view or because you know that a lot of your fans like vinyl and are going to buy it and listen to it on that, it kind of forces you away from doing it that way, and kind of makes you view it as a sort of complete thing and body of work rather than just a list of songs, 3 or 4 of which you're hoping to get on the radio, so you put those first.
Yes. So the temperance movement go on hiatus, shall we say, during lockdown, and the next time I see you, you're out with James Blunt. Have you? Did you play with him before?
I had done something with him. I'm trying to think when it was. Beginning of 2019, I think. I went away with him for 2 weeks because his guitar player couldn't do it. And then when I said that I was away when the pandemic hit, I was away with James then.
Ah, right. Yes, yes. I was aware that tour was going on because of the mutual Eric connection.
Right.
Yeah, I was sat next to Eric when he was trying to figure out what to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, but as I think some people know about the temperance movement, we were kind of session musicians that wanted to do our own thing. So that's how I knew everyone in the band, apart from Phil, was from playing for different artists. And the temperance movement wasn't really meant to become what it did. We initially kind of just viewed it as kind of like a side project to have some fun, play some music that we really wanted to play.
Yeah.
And it kind of quite quickly we realised that it could be more than that if we sort of put the work in and prioritised it. So that's what we did.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd all done sessiony things before it, and even during it to some extent. I was still playing on the odd record and doing a bit of live stuff here and there if I could fit it in. So it didn't kind of come totally out of the blue, the James Blunt thing.
Assuming sort of like, I don't know, you're 18, 20, something like that. How did you get into doing session work then?
Well, I mean, everybody has. There's no route into being a session musician. Do you know what I mean? It's everyone that you ask will give you a completely different answer. For me, the other thing is it's hard to say what was my route in because it's a combination of things, and I'm not sure if you take certain things away, would I still have ended up being able to make a living from playing or not? It's hard to say which bits were the most key. But I would say that probably the most important thing was that like as a kid and at school I was always playing in bands and there was a kind of scene, I suppose, of people doing things, and I was just constantly getting involved in everything like anybody would. And there was a young kind of producer guy who was writing songs in his bedroom with various people, and one of the people that he was working with was a singer called David Jordan. And so I just went round to their place one day and played guitar on a load of songs that they'd been writing for him. And David then, I don't really know how, but David got noticed by Trevor Horn, the producer.
Yeah.
And ended up signing a publishing deal with Trevor's publishing company, and Trevor produced the album. And for whatever reason, I don't really know, I got a call to go and play on the record as a result of having played on these demos, which I think is complete kind of fluke, you know, because I think, you know, it's very, very rare that someone who played on some demos in a bedroom would be called back in that way. But and you know, one thing kind of led to another, and they Trevor asked me to kind of, I should say that at this point I'm doing loads and loads of playing. I'm not like playing in my bedroom, you know, and suddenly Trevor Horn calls. Like I'm doing loads of stuff, but I'm doing I'm playing in covers bands mainly, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm probably playing, you know, 5 nights a week with good musicians. But I'm not working for any sort of signed artists or producers or anything like that. And then I get involved with this thing with Trevor, and he asks me to arrange and MD a band for the album. And kind of, again, by fluke, I sort of ask around, and I booked some more established musicians to play on the record.
Yeah.
Who were already doing cool things. So I got to meet all these people. And not only that, but I got to give them some work, and it was playing on a record with Trevor Horn. So, which I often, you know, because I've been in to do sort of some talks at music colleges and stuff. And it's something that I always try and sort of say to the kids when I do these talks is, rather than, and I did it unwittingly really, but you know, rather than waiting for one of those kind of people to call you up out the blue and go and get involved with whatever it is that they're doing, the best way to go about it is to try and be the person providing work.
Yeah.
And you know, if you've got a well-paid covers gig, because everyone goes and does all sorts of stuff, and most musicians, you know, if they've got a bit of time off and the money's okay, they'll go and do whatever, really.
Yeah.
So I'm always saying to them, try and be the person that's dishing it out rather than begging for it.
Yeah.
And you know, or it could be, it doesn't even have to be a well-paid thing, but people in general just want to get involved in stuff that they think's good. So, you know, if you write a few decent songs and need someone to play on them, call up like the big boys, you know, and get them in.
Oh, you've done it now. You'll be getting a call off me very soon.
Well, I'm up for it.
Awesome.
I think sometimes people think that they can't call, you know, well-known or renowned musicians or whatever to get involved in things, but you can, and they'll tell you what their sort of rate is, and you'd either do it or you don't. But even if you decide not to do it, you've still kind of opened a relationship with them,
Yeah.
and you can then sort of politely say, thanks so much, bit out of my budget at the moment, or whatever it is. But you've kind of sparked a bit of a relationship with them, and you've gone to them as someone that is being proactive, not as someone that just kind of wants to tap into their world and what they've worked really hard at developing.
Yeah. I was doing a bit of research earlier, and with regard to doing like session gigs and stuff, and I came across the Paul Sayer Appreciation Society Facebook group. I mean, the first question is, how do you feel about that? But also on that, there was a picture of you, I think, playing for Barry Manilow.
So the Appreciation Society is run by a very nice lady called Valentina, who is a Temperance movement fan. And, I don't know whether it's a bit of I'm not particularly, what's the word? Like, I find kind of like the, other people are much better at being self-promoting on social media than I am. I kind of struggle with it a bit. I could probably be a lot better at it. And so I kind of, it's quite a British thing to be,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying. But, it's just it's really sweet. It's great. I should probably try and sort of engage with it a bit more, is what I'm saying. But
yeah,
it kind of feels weird, so I don't. And that's not because of anything they're doing. That's just because that's just me kind of going, well, why? But it's cool. And the thing with Barry Manilow, to be honest with you, I've done loads and loads of things like that with people over the years. And I'm struggling to even remember exactly what it was that we did. But I think he was just over doing some promo or something, and we played 2 songs on one of the TV shows. It might have been Live from the Apollo, maybe.
Yeah, the photograph kind of looked like that. It
was definitely in one of those kind of theatre-y venues. Yeah. And then I think there maybe was a couple of days work with him. We then went and did some stuff the next day, some like breakfast TV or whatever. But that was a thing where he's coming over. He needs a band. It's not worth him bringing his band over, to play 2 songs on a TV show. And that's where the kind of session fixer agent thing kind of comes into play. And there's a good friend of mine called Bob Knight who books musicians for a lot of those kind of things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know what the backstory is, but I assume that Bob would have got a call from the label or someone and said, we need this, this and this. And he called me, and he probably organises 10 of those kind of things a week,
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and like I said, I've done kind of loads of those kind of things, and it's really cool. But I suppose I don't really, it feels more rewarding when an artist particularly wants you and they know you. So I suppose I don't kind of like, I'm not sort of like reveling in that and patting myself on the back because It's really nice that Bob called me, you know, because he will call people that he likes and thinks are good and is going to work. But in that situation, it's the fixer who is making a call on who the musicians should be.
Yeah,
and you know, a good fixer will work well because they have a reputation for booking the right people.
Have you ever ended up working with someone that you really, you're a fan of yourself? I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming that I know there's the Stones and the Faces sort of thing. Has Rod Stewart ever, have you ever ended up playing for Rod or something like that?
Do you know what? Funnily enough, last night I was at the Royal Variety Show with James. We were playing on that, and Rod Stewart was on the bill as well. And I thought to myself, I'm glad I'm not doing that gig. That's probably pretty out of order, but if you see it, you'll know what I mean.
I wasn't going to watch it, but I'm going to watch it now.
I'm not sure if it will make the cut.
Right.
I played with Ray Davies for a bit.
Oh wow!
And that was pretty special. And I guess I'm a sort of big believer, even in just going and seeing bands, and artists and whoever, just as a fan, that kind of like the timing and where they are at in their sort of career is so important. The best experience you can have is seeing the right thing at the right time in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's very, very rare. And none of, so few people have seen kind of like the legends in that way. Because if you could choose anywhere where you're going to see the Stones or the Kinks, you'd want to see them, late 60s in a club somewhere.
Yeah.
Which none of us are ever going to get to do. But the thing with Ray, which was amazing, was to learn to play his songs, because he's such a he's just an unbelievable songwriter, and the craft that goes into his songs, is right up there. Verses, and I'm a massive Faces fan, but they're less about the songs, the Faces, and more about the sound of the band and attitude.
If I could have joined any band in the world, I'd have joined the Faces, because it just looked like they had so much fun.
Yeah, that BBC live performance, they just look like they're having the best time. And I agree. Yeah. I'd probably join the Faces if I had a time machine or whatever. I'd probably join the Faces over the Kinks. Yeah. But I think that when I was playing with Ray, it was something that I could really get a lot out of, because the songs still exist in the same way they did the day they were written. And to really kind of like dedicate the time to go through his catalogue and really listen to the records and talk to him about it as I'm learning it, and realise how sort of incredible his songwriting was pretty special. And I think probably, that in that instant, that was that was the best thing about having that gig, more than actually playing the shows themselves.
Yeah.
It's like the opportunity to get that deeper understanding of his songwriting.
It's not very often you sit at the feet of like one of the all-time master songwriters, is it really? I mean,
no. And like I say, I wasn't a massive Kinks or Ray Davies fan before I got the gig. So I think I hadn't kind of fully appreciated how great a songwriter he is. And also what I kind of learned in that process is that one of the things that makes him such an amazing songwriter is that he makes kind of quite complex things sound so effortless. And that, you know, some of his songs are pretty complex harmonically, but they don't sound like it when you're just listening as a listener, you know. And so that's where you kind of, and then when you start unpicking it, you kind of, his sort of genius is in making it so listenable, if that's the right word, you know.
That's amazing.
If you compare like something like Daydream Believer, or even actually Lola, kind of sounds like, I bet you there's a lot of sort of pub covers bands that have set about covering Lola thinking it's pretty much a 12 bar and come unstuck very quickly because it's not. Right. But it sort of sounds like it. Yeah. But there's way more going on than that. So yeah,
well, I'm going to dig that out this evening and have a listen to it because I haven't listened to Lola for quite a long time. But like you say, I never really thought it was an overly complex song at all.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's not his most complex, obviously, but it's very hard to just kind of like jam along to it.
I think people in Britain still think that Ray Davies is like one of the originators, really. That they never got that worldwide recognition that the Beatles and the Stones kind of got. So maybe he didn't get distracted by all of that.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, maybe he's had to kind of keep working a bit harder, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Stones. So, you know, but both me and Ant, they're probably our favourite band. But they haven't really done anything very good for 25, 30 years, really. I mean, it's some of it's okay.
Yeah, the Stones don't have a songwriter in the band like Ray. You know, and it's less what they're about. And there's obviously something about the combination of probably Mick and Keith, which means that they can kind of strike gold. But you kind of get the feeling that neither of them ever kind of walked in to the studio with a finished song and went, I've got this, you know.
Yeah.
It sort of feels like it was always a band endeavour to write a song, and the magic was about the two of them, probably.
Yeah.
And you know, and obviously the thing about that is, it's kind of like will be dramatically affected by their relationship.
Yes.
Whereas I think someone like Ray goes away, writes an amazing song, comes back, plays it to everybody.
At this point, I should tell you that you've cost me many thousands of pounds, because when you came to the guitar show, I was going to say a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, and you played through your Lazy J amps, I ended up having to sell all of my amps and purchase a J20 because it was the greatest sound I'd ever heard. Yeah. Are you still using the Lazy J's?
I do still use them. I've got other things as well, but I still have them and I still use them and I still love them. Yeah,
it was funny because we had the year after you performed, I had Bernard Butler at the show. who came and did the same sort of thing as you did, and he
Right.
bought his Lazy J's as well. It was like they're just the most glorious amps. I love them.
There's loads of amazing amplifiers and pedals and guitars and everything out there, and pretty much everyone making them are really good at what they do. And the kind of key is finding someone that sort of has the same ears as you. You know, most people, like I guess that kind of sort of. I mean, I don't know. I know nothing about it, but Jess's skill. It's not sort of the technical soldering, is it? It's how he hears things.
Yeah.
And I think when you find someone that makes stuff, you kind of hear and like the same things, you're probably going to like everything they make.
Yeah.
And I'm like that with Analog Man pedals as well. Everything he makes, I love.
Yeah.
And that's got to be because he's trying to make. We've got the same reference points or whatever it is. You know, we're into what we think the same things are good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And other people won't, or they'll have a slightly different. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I assume that I kind of sort of really honed in, because I love the Temperance movement, because of the faces, because of the Stones. It just kind of was like, that's the sound I've been looking for. And I'd been kind of like flapping around for years with amps. Got a million guitars and only tended to have like a couple of amps. And it was like, I never really got one that honed in on what I was hearing until I heard yours.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is about it, and you know, to get a bit more geeky, all those guitar sounds that you are talking about that you love were probably 100-watt Marshalls, and that you can't do that anymore.
No,
and you are never going to get a 100-watt Marshall anywhere near the zone where it needs to be to sound like that. And even playing in arenas, I can't get a 100-watt Marshall into the zone to sound like that. So you've got to find something that kind of gives you that at a reasonable volume, basically. And I think, you know, people get really kind of bogged down in the sort of intricacies of the front end of a Plexi versus the front end of an AC30, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I kind of think that it's you can look at it, and most people will get closer to where they want to be if you think in much broader strokes than that. And the first one is volume, because if you can't use the amp at the volume at which it sounds best, it doesn't matter how good it is, because you're never getting anywhere near it sounding as good as it can. And then I think that, you know, the amount of sort of compression that the amp has is like really sort of crucial to if you like it or not. So, you know, the kind of fine tuning of how much top end it's got or whatever, you can kind of fiddle with that. Or if you really have to, you can use a pedal to kind of get it where you need it. But the most important things are kind of being able to use whatever it is in its sort of sweet spot.
Yeah,
I suppose.
Which
is why the two Lazies always worked really well for me.
Yeah. Are you still playing the Greco as well?
I've still got it. I'm not playing it as much. I got. Did I have that with me that
Yeah.
day?
You bought the Greco and the Tele Custom.
Yeah. So I've always played Teles, and that will always be my sort of go-to guitar. And I suppose to have a different flavour, I love 335s, and I kind of think of Telecasters as like that's my voice, and playing something else is me assuming a character. Which sometimes you want to do, and sometimes you want to sound, different. And so I've still got the Greco, but I've also got an old 345.
Nice.
Which I'm kind of using as well. I think I went through a lot of vintage 335s, and I couldn't really find one with the right balance of me loving it enough to make me feel like the investment was worth it.
Yeah.
So that's why the Greco always stuck around. And in the end, I just kind of said, well, I'm going to this is going to be my 335. I don't really know why I'm messing about. But then I had a 63 Strat, which had been refinished and stuff. And someone asked if I wanted to trade it for this 345, which I did. And it's the right kind of, it's had a couple of changes. So it's a 345, which are a bit cheaper anyway. So I can kind of use it and tour it.
Yeah,
and not feel guilty about it.
Yeah. So that's what Chuck Berry used to play, wasn't it? A 345. I think in reality, I know everybody thinks it was a 335, but it wasn't, was it?
Either a 345 or a 355. Yeah, I mean they're the same guitar basically with a Veritone.
Veritone, and hasn't got the split parallelogram markers, wasn't
exactly.
it?
Yeah, the inlays are different.
Yeah.
But mainly it's the Veritone and stuff. But to be honest, I'm probably going to take the Veritone out of it. And that's another reason why I quite like this one. It's because I can kind of mess about with it a bit without feeling like I'm destroying history.
So what's next for you? Are you back out with James, or?
Yeah, so I've been pretty busy with James over the last couple of weeks. Doing some promo. He's released a greatest hits album today, and it's got 4 new tunes on it, which I played on from home during lockdown, with some very frantic FaceTime action with James, and so all this week we've been doing promo for the record. And there's a bit more to do before Christmas. And then next year, definitely for the first half of the year, fingers crossed, if everything can go ahead as planned, I'll be touring with James for the first half of the year.
Is he as funny as his social media would let on?
He's kind of exactly what you'd think he is from all that stuff. He is that person.
Oh, good. I'm glad it's
his kind of line of whenever anyone gives him any stick about his music or whatever, his kind of response is always some version of, well, I'm rich and happy, so who cares? and that is really what he thinks.
Good for him.
It's actually like so many artists are sort of racked with kind of what's the word? You know, self-doubt. Which, you know, I think that's another topic. But I kind of think that sort of trait is actually what makes a lot of people really good at what they do. But James is just like a very straightforward guy, and it's kind of nice to be around, you know, because there's never extra stuff going on. You're never having to read between the lines.
Yeah, I wonder whether, you know, because he served in Bosnia, didn't he? I think that was the. I wonder whether when you've actually been to war, music just is kind of like, this is fun. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, I've seen Life or Death, and this isn't it.
I think I don't know if that is the reason why he's like that, but he is like that. He's kind of, you know, and it's true. So many people kind of moan about the downsides of being on tour, which, you know, everyone's allowed their 5 minutes if they're really tired or really missing their kids or whatever it may be, you know. But you can do some things, and the kind of moaning is almost like a sport, and yeah, he's kind of not only does he not kind of complain or moan or, you know, or take anything too seriously, he also works really, really hard. And when you're that's nice to be around as well, because it's not much fun being on tour with people when you feel like they don't really care about what they're doing very much, you know, because it's just you really want the artist that you're playing for to kind of be banging the drum and leading everybody.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's their thing that you're out there facilitating. And it's much more enjoyable if it feels like they really care about it and they're prepared to work really hard, and you know, and kind of like, to go full circle, that's kind of why Temperance movement started, is because everyone was doing a lot of playing for people and contributing an awful lot to things that at the end of the day weren't theirs.
Yeah.
And we were kind of just like, why don't we do something where we put all this heart and soul into our own music? So yeah, but you know, James does care, and he does work hard, and that's kind of like, I think that's why he's still around and hasn't sort of disappeared into oblivion like so many people do, is because really he's just sort of a grafter.
Yeah. I think people forget, actually, it is a job, and you just have to do it like every other job.
Yeah. And it's much more rewarding when you put the work in, because you know, like the only I've sort of been fortunate to play for a long time. I've been touring and playing gigs for a long time, and I've played all sizes of gigs, and so no size of gig or situation makes me nervous. Like, because people are often like, aren't you nervous? You know, when you're going on at a big festival, or when, say, opening for the Stones or whatever it may be, and that doesn't make me nervous. But what the only times that I might get nervous is if I kind of know that I'm underprepared.
Yeah.
And so if you don't put the work into what you're doing, you can't enjoy it as much as, you know, going out there knowing you're all over what you need to do, and you're kind of at the top of your game, or as close to it as you can be, and then you can go out and really have a good time and really enjoy it, and you get a lot more out of it.
Yeah. Cool. I'm out of questions now, Ant. Have you got any?
Well, I was actually thinking that was a really nice place to stop. It was almost the kind of 9 o'clock news little tagline, wasn't it? It was the audio money shot, shall we say?
Cool.
So, Paul, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Nice to chat.
For your time. It's been absolutely fascinating. We covered far more than I thought we'd get through, to be honest. You know, there's a real lot packed into that. Cool. So it's I'm sure it's going to be something that people are really going to take a lot from. And good luck. Obviously, hopefully, you can get out, you know, next year, and that tour is not broken up, and you don't have to make a decision about whether you bring your shoes back or not.
We'll definitely do some of it. I just hope we can do all of it, but, you know, we'll do some of it at least.
Maybe a second pair of shoes. Maybe, you know, Christmas is coming. Maybe a second pair of shoes,
shouldn't I? Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for agreeing to do this, and it's been nice to see you again, and hopefully we'll see you at the guitar show again in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, guys. Nice to chat to you.
Thanks for listening to 9 to 42, the podcast from the team at the Guitar Show UK. If you've enjoyed the show, then please remember to hit the subscribe button and share with other like-minded souls. For more information about 9 to 42, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter or Instagram at the Guitar Show UK. This has been an A Short Stories production.